Now, in the years since 9/11, we've seen drastic changes in this country. Many of them justified by lawmakers, pundits, defense and intelligence officials and analysts, all peddling constant fear. Now, one specific area that we've been warned about incessantly over the last few years is the threat of homegrown terrorism. And it's not just a line that was repeated by officials or put into reports. No, we saw the government act on it. We've now seen extensive documentation of local police departments, specifically the NYPD, spying on Muslim communities. We've seen one sting operation after another. And how could we forget? There were those hearings on Muslim radicalization held right here on Capitol Hill. And you know the mainstream media, well, they've played along with this hysteria all along. Compared to other heinous crimes, every time that there's been an arrest in what could have been a terrorist plot, especially with a Muslim perpetrator, staged by the FBI or not, that mugshot was splashed across the screen for hours, days, even weeks on end.
So who is this teenager authorities say wanted to cause so much mayhem in Portland?
The new chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee is going to hold congressional hearings on the radicalization of Muslim Americans later this week. New York Congressman Peter King says the hearings are to help him learn how certain U.S. citizens are recruited or drawn into terrorism.
According to court records, Mohammed said he had been interested in jihad since he was an early teen, even writing for a jihadist website under an assumed name.
All of them were actually the intended targets of a would-be terrorist here to wage war right in his own backyard. According to the undercover FBI agents who spent time with him, 19-year-old Mohammed Osman Mohammed was a teen anxious to go, quote, operational and to learn about explosives.
Are you targeting Muslims?
Absolutely not. What I'm targeting is violent terrorists and extremists.
So considering our media's obsession with the threat of homegrown radicalization, or fine, you can call it concern if you want, although I don't buy it, you would think that a certain report released today would have caught their eye. The Triangle Center on Terrorism and Homeland Security has just released a report that shows that the feared wave of homegrown terrorism by radicalized Muslim Americans, well, they've shown that it has not materialized. The report's author actually called it a minuscule threat to public safety. Now, the report also includes these details. Plots and arrests have dropped sharply over the last 2 years since the peak in 2009. Of about 14,000 murders in the United States in the last year, not a single one resulted from Islamic extremism. So, there you go, folks. This incredible threat hasn't materialized. And yet, what are the sacrifices that we've all been forced to make in order to be ready to counter it? What are the grave offenses that have been committed against our civil liberties? The power grabs that lawmakers have been able to make while selling us fear of a homegrown threat. Now, as usual, Glenn Greenwald did another great job today of recounting it for us at his blog on Salon.com. That includes Miranda rights being curtailed for domestic terror suspects. We now have an indefinite military detention provision codified into law through the N.D.A.A. that was just signed by the president on December 31st of last year. There's a bill that's been pushed by members of Congress to strip Americans of their citizenship if they're accused of being associated with terrorism. And as I already mentioned, we've seen our local law enforcement spy on Muslim communities, spy on and infiltrate communities based on their religion, even work with the CIA in order to do it. Now, you guys know that's technically against the law, right? And yet all along, where has our mainstream media been when it comes to reporting on these changes? The truth is that for the most part, they have been part of the crowd that's actually been peddling the fear. They've allowed the fearmongers to grace the television screens, often unchecked by any facts or statistics. They've spent countless hours holding up the threat and the fear by flashing mugshots of scary-looking Muslim men. And yet when a report comes out showing that this threat has been inflated, that the facts do not back up the claims, they just completely ignore it. And it's not like this thing was hard to find either, people. It was written about in the New York Times, but it's something that the fear-pushing accomplices in the mainstream cable network media have completely chosen to miss.